Eva Morgan arrived at Maxwell Air Force Base just before sunrise. The Alabama humidity already clung to her skin as she stepped off the shuttle, a standard-issue duffel slung over her shoulder. At 32, she was one of the oldest recruits in this officer training school intake, and it showed not in how she moved, but in how she didn't fidget like the others. Her frame was lean but unimposing, 5'3" in running shoes, hair pulled into a tight regulation bun. She looked more like someone who ran spreadsheets than sprints. She didn't speak unless addressed. And when she did, her voice was even and quiet, with none of the forced enthusiasm others seemed to display. Some of the younger recruits sized her up immediately. A pair of 20-somethings whispered as she passed, one nudging the other. Logistics, I bet. Admin branch, probably used to making spreadsheets about spreadsheets. Their chuckles were the low kind, not meant to be kind. Eva didn't react. She found her bunk, stowed her gear, and began preparing for the first group PT session at 05:00. The first formation came fast. Rows of fresh recruits stretched under a pale sky, waiting for roll call. Staff Sergeant Daniels, the primary training instructor, barked names and orders with a voice that had seen 18 years of issuing both. Recruits scrambled to obey. Eva stood at attention, neither late nor eager. She answered her name clearly. No extra words. Daniels eyed her briefly. Admin transfer, he asked, mostly to himself. The tone carried mild amusement. Several heads turned toward her. She held her posture. Warm-up began with jumping jacks, push-ups, then 2-mile formation run. Eva kept pace, though she lagged near the back. Her breathing was steady but tight. At the first water break, someone muttered, "Bet she hasn't run since basic." A few snorted. Eva took her water in measured sips and looked straight ahead. After PT came obstacle course orientation, rope climbs, wall scaling, sandbag carries, low crawls. Staff Sergeant Daniels walked them through it. His eyes paused again on Eva as they passed the rope station. "You're gonna love this one, Morgan. Hope you packed your grip strength." She nodded once. No comeback? No smile? That quiet unsettled some of the others. One trainee, a sharp-jawed Air Force Academy graduate named Wallace, leaned toward another and whispered, "She's gonna fold by Wednesday. Logistics doesn't prep you for barbed wire and mud." Eva was used to this. Laughlin hadn't been much different when she first transferred there from Keesler. Young airmen thought logistics was coffee and clipboards. They didn't see the months spent coordinating deployment rotations, or the red-eye hours matching airframes with cargo ops, or the endless chaos of broken systems that needed fixing without complaint. The mud was just different here. By mid-morning, the class was given 20 minutes to change into fresh workout gear for a second PT block. The locker room buzzed with chatter. Eva moved efficiently, changing in silence. Another recruit, Martinez, glanced at her arms and smirked. "I've seen civilians with more muscle tone." Eva ignored her and zipped up her jacket. The next round of calisthenics was rougher. During heavy tire flips, Eva's form faltered, and she fell back from her group. Daniels called out sharply, "Don't stop! No one's going to carry your load in the field!" She gritted her teeth and kept moving. By the time they were ordered to remove outer layers due to the heat, her gray undershirt clung to her back. As she peeled off her soaked jacket, someone behind her stopped moving altogether. What is that on her back?" A dark tattoo sat between her shoulder blades, partially obscured by sweat and fabric. An angular symbol, cleanly inked, flanked by a string of coordinates and something like a dagger. The room quieted slightly, not from reverence, but from confusion. Wallace muttered, "That's not a training flight logo. That's special tactics." Eva pulled her shirt straight without a word. No one said anything more, but the glances lingered. Staff Sergeant Daniels had seen it too. His expression didn't change, but his voice lost a notch of sharpness when he moved on. "Resume. Let's go." They ran shuttle sprints next. Eva's time was bottom third, but she didn't stop. She didn't ask for water. When a recruit slipped and cursed nearby, she instinctively reached out to steady her, then stepped back without a word. At 11:30, they broke for chow. The dining hall filled with boots and tired eyes. Eva sat alone, spooning rice into her mouth slowly. No one joined her table, but no one taunted her anymore either. Martinez whispered to another trainee, "She gives me weird vibes." Like she's watching and not saying anything because she's seen worse. The second trainee nodded. Or maybe she's just trying to survive. Eva didn't look up, but her eyes flicked across the room once, catching the reflection of a security badge hanging off a staff NCO's belt. She didn't need to read it. She'd memorized names faster than most ever knew. By 14:00, they were back outside. Obstacle course walkthrough began. Eva's turn came last. She slipped slightly on the rope, but recovered. Cleared the wall. Dragged her sandbag the full 50 yards without complaint. Daniels timed her. She finished just under the cutoff. "Barely," he said flatly. Eva nodded once. Understood. As they lined up for end-of-day formation, the sun cast long shadows across the field. Daniels dismissed them with a curt reminder. "Tomorrow gets harder. Most of you won't make it. Some of you were never meant to." Eva didn't flinch. She adjusted the strap of her duffel and moved toward the barracks. A few recruits watched her go. No one spoke. In the quiet that followed, Wallace looked at the tattoo again in his memory and frowned. Something about that symbol didn't feel decorative, and Eva Morgan didn't walk like someone new to discomfort. She walked like someone familiar with gravity. By 06:45, the squad stood at the track's edge under a sky already tinted with heat. Technical Sergeant Burns paced in front of them with a clipboard in hand, his voice sharp and practiced. Today was the initial PT evaluation. Standard issue 1.5-mile timed run, maximum push-ups and sit-ups in 1 minute, rope climb, and tire flip drill. Failure to meet minimums wouldn't get you kicked out, he said. But it would label you. Eva stood in the back row. Her hands were laced behind her back, eyes fixed straight ahead. Her small frame didn't exactly scream athlete. A young trainee 2 spots over leaned toward his buddy and muttered, "Bet she does 6 push-ups and taps out." The friend chuckled quietly. Eva said nothing. They started with the run. 2 laps and some change around the track, just under 1.5 miles. Recruits bunched early, trying to pace off each other. Eva kept her rhythm slow but steady. Her arms pumped low, elbows tight. Breathing in counts of 4. She passed no one, but she didn't fall behind either. Halfway through the second lap, Wallace passed her with a snort. "You're going to need a wheelchair by week's end." "Grandma." Eva didn't break stride. She focused on the next step, then the next. Her shoes hit the pavement in a rhythm that didn't change, even when her breath caught near the end. She crossed the finish line in the lower third, chest heaving but upright. Burns glanced at the stopwatch. 14:37. Not great. Not a failure. She moved to the sit-up station, unrolled her mat, and lay back. Martinez held her ankles and smirked. "You ever done one of these without a desk?" In the way Eva stared at the clouds and gave no reply. The whistle blew. She started. The first 20 came fast. By 30, her pace slowed. At 42, her arms began to tremble. She pushed through 2 more. Then the whistle sounded. 44. She rolled onto her side, gasping, but not quitting. Push-ups came next. The grass was slick with sweat and dew. Eva's palms dug in. Burns knelt to count. Begin. Her arms moved smooth and shallow at first, then slower. At 12, her elbows started to tremble. At 19, she paused, mid-air, teeth clenched. She managed 21 by the whistle, Wallace gave a low whistle. Did better than I thought. Still not officer material. Eva wiped her face with the hem of her sleeve and moved aside. She didn't meet anyone's gaze. The rope climb followed, mounted against a wooden rig, 30 feet up and back down. Recruits lined up, one by one. They launched into the climb, some fast, others struggling halfway. Eva stepped up. She checked her grip. Burns watched silently. Go. She jumped, caught the first hold, and began to pull. Her form was functional but slow. Her feet scuffed the rope. Her hands burned on each push. Halfway up, she stopped and reset her grip. Below, someone muttered, "Should have stayed in the file room." She reached the top lip after a solid minute, touched it, then started down. When she landed, her knees bent deeply to absorb the impact. She turned and moved aside without a word. Her hands were raw. She flexed her fingers once, checked for blisters, and didn't flinch. Last was the tire flip drill. 50 yards, 500-pound tire, flip and drag. She squared up. Burns called out, "Let's move." "Morgan." She dug low and grunted. The first flip took everything. Her foot slipped in the dirt. She adjusted and tried again. Progress was slow. Dirt caked her palms. Her jaw set like concrete. Recruits ahead of her had already finished. Martinez jogged by, sweat pouring. "You're making that tire look bad." She called. Eva ignored it. She finished last. But she finished. By 09:10 the squad was drenched. Uniforms clung to skin. The Alabama sun had no mercy. Burns barked. "Hydrate. Strip out of your top layers. Undershirts only. Let's go again in 30. Eva peeled off her outer shirt. As she turned to shake out her arms, someone behind her stopped talking mid-sentence. Wallace froze. What the hell is that? Across the center of Eva's upper back, partially visible through her sweat-stained undershirt, was a deep, black tattoo. Unlike most unit logos, this one was crisp and narrow, marked with sharp, military-styled lettering V7. Below it, a row of 7 vertical hash marks framed a slim dagger pointing downward, etched with faint coordinates underneath. Burns caught sight of it as he passed. His steps faltered. His voice, for the first time all day, dropped in tone. "Morgan, where did you get that ink?" Eva straightened. Line of sight forward. Her face didn't move. Burns stared for a moment. His lips parted like he meant to say something else. Then he didn't. The rest of the recruits quieted. The silence was short, but heavy. Then someone coughed, and movement resumed. No questions, no explanations, but eyes lingered longer than before. Wallace whispered, "That ain't a motivational tattoo. That's a real thing." Martinez nodded, suddenly unsure. One of the instructors had stopped walking. Another stood further back, arms folded, watching Eva. She picked up her water bottle and sipped like nothing had happened. Burns said nothing more. He turned on his heel and resumed checking times. His clipboard hand didn't tremble, but he checked it twice. The next round began 10 minutes later. But the energy had shifted. Eva moved at the same pace, still quiet, still steady. But now, even the ones who laughed weren't so loud. Something had changed. No one knew what. But whatever they'd seen on her back wasn't standard issue, and the man in charge had noticed. She wiped sweat from her forehead and adjusted her grip on the rope again. She wasn't faster, wasn't stronger, still breathing hard like the rest of them. But this time, no one made a joke when she passed. They just watched her go. At 11:25, the air was thick with sweat and gravel dust. The squad had just wrapped a set of casualty drags when Lieutenant Colonel Leland walked across the edge of the field. He was in his late 40s, sharp-featured, square in posture, with the kind of stride that made junior airmen stand a little straighter when he passed. He wasn't scheduled for a visit that morning, but his presence turned heads regardless. He moved along the sideline, clipboard tucked under his arm, observing the trainees in rotation. Then he stopped. His gaze locked onto Eva as she adjusted her undershirt near the gear pile. Her back was turned. The tattoo was visible again. Black ink. Slightly faded, but unmistakable. He froze. The dagger. The hash marks. The unit code V7. A beat passed. Then another. His mouth opened slightly, like a memory had just punched through 20 layers of classified reports. He stepped forward, slowly. Sergeant Burns noticed and followed his eyes. He recognized the stillness in Leland's stance. It wasn't confusion. It was recognition. Lieutenant Colonel Leland didn't raise his voice. "Morgan," he said, low and clear. "That tattoo. What unit authorized it?" Eva turned to face him, square and calm. She stood at parade rest. "Sir, Viper 7, recon and rear guard, operational status decommissioned, mission reference Operation Black Glade, tattoo authorized post-deployment, unit memorial protocol." For a second, it felt like the training field had dropped 5 degrees. Trainees nearby went still. They weren't sure what they were hearing, but they knew it wasn't routine. Leland's jaw tightened. "You're Viper 7. Eva met his eyes. "Rear guard, sir. Call sign, Viper Echo. Assigned recon and delay cover for primary exfil element." He blinked once. "That's not possible. That file's been sealed for—" His words drifted off. Burns took a half step back, his eyes wide. Another senior NCO, Master Sergeant Holloway, walked over, glancing between them. Leland exhaled sharply. "I read that AAR. 7 stayed behind. You were the last out." Eva's expression didn't change. "Confirmed, sir. Final action at grid point Lima 26. Held for 7 minutes. No QRF. No CAS. No UAV support. Standard comms blackout." Martinez had stopped mid-rep on the pull-up bar. Wallace stood rigid, eyes darting between the colonel and Eva. A few of the other trainees whispered low and fast. Most didn't understand the names, but they saw enough. Lieutenant Colonel Leland turned to Holloway. "Viper 7's mission files were Tier 0 classified. I signed one of the final coordination briefs. The unit was built for short-term deep recon in denied territory. Minimal footprint. No support. If she's who she says she is." Eva nodded once. "I can provide serial auth verification through proper channel, sir. The tattoo includes encrypted marks under blacklight. Leland didn't ask for it. He didn't need to." He looked around the field. His voice rose only slightly. "No further PT. Squad is on standby. Continue hydration and passive recovery. Instructors, remain with your teams." Then he faced Eva again. "I need to speak with you privately." She gave a crisp nod. "Yes, sir." As they walked toward the admin trailer, no one spoke. No one moved. Even the birds around the edge of the field seemed quiet. Inside the small admin trailer, the air conditioning hummed faintly over the soft clink of ceramic mugs. Lieutenant Colonel Leland poured 2 cups of black coffee without asking, then handed one to Eva. She took it with a steady grip. Her uniform shirt had been thrown back on, but the collar still hung open. The tattoo wasn't visible now. But it didn't need to be. He leaned against the edge of the desk, arms crossed. "Black Glade," he said quietly. "I thought all of you either transferred out or—" He didn't finish. The implication hung in the silence between them. Eva nodded once. 12 inserted, 5 extracted. And you were rear guard. "Yes, sir." He studied her face. "You held them off alone for 7 minutes. Confirmed." Enemy elements had triangulated our egress corridor. First LZ was compromised. We rerouted toward fallback point Bravo. I volunteered to delay. Leland rubbed his temple. 7 minutes in a compromised corridor. No support, no SATCOM, no QRF. That's not a footnote. That's textbook impossible. She said nothing. What gear standard load? M4 with Trigicon ACOG. 4 mags. 2 frags. Sidearm. No NVG. Nightfall was still an hour out. You got hit left shoulder during the last reposition. Through and through. No bone. I was able to relocate to cover and continue suppressive fire. Leland let out a breath. You stayed until the birds got them out. Confirmed. Last chopper lifted at 18:07. I confirmed dust-off visually before I moved. The time clicked in his head. You gave them 7 minutes of freedom of movement in open terrain. No cross cover, just you holding a choke point. Eva nodded again. I chose high ground. Elevation was minimal, but the angle gave me a clean field. Leland looked down at his coffee, then back at her. Why didn't you list it in your transfer file? Because it wasn't about me, sir. Viper 7's record was sealed. I kept it that way. He stood slowly, the weight of his own memories folding into his posture. I've seen silver stars handed out for less. You didn't even request recognition. My team got home. That was the mission. Outside, the training squad still stood in loose formation. No one spoke, but word had already spread. Wallace stared at the ground. Martinez kept wiping her palms on her uniform. The others exchanged nervous glances. Leland stepped out of the trailer, motioning for Eva to follow. He raised his voice enough to be heard across the field. What you saw earlier was not an accident. That tattoo is not a design. It's earned. The trainees turned, quiet and still. Operation Black Glade was a Tier 1 recon mission into hostile territory. No air support. No drone coverage. No fallback options. The goal was to intercept and confirm WMD movement through a contested corridor. It was successful. Barely. Because one person stayed behind to hold the line. He paused, letting the weight settle. 7 minutes doesn't sound like much, but under fire, it's a lifetime. One magazine lasts maybe 20 seconds in controlled bursts. She had 4. He looked at Eva, then back at them. She delayed an armed pursuit with less than 1 rifle loadout. She was wounded and still managed to hold the corridor until the final exfil was complete. No spotlight, no speeches, just silence. Eva stood beside him, unmoved by the attention. The silence deepened. This time, it wasn't about discomfort. It was respect, and the slow dawning realization that the woman they mocked had already survived what most of them feared in theory. No one laughed anymore. The squad reassembled on the training field just after 13. Heat shimmered off the concrete pads where their boots lined up, and the air was quieter than it had been all morning. No side chatter, no banter, not after what they'd seen, not after who Eva Morgan had turned out to be. Lieutenant Colonel Leland stood before them, his hands behind his back, face unreadable. The senior instructors flanked him in a subtle half-circle. Staff Sergeant Burns was unusually still. Master Sergeant Holloway didn't even have his clipboard. Whatever was coming wasn't standard. Leland scanned the group. You've been learning how to lead, how to carry your weight, how to recognize strength. But there's something most of you haven't learned yet. He paused. That not all strength looks like you expect. The trainees stood rigid. Martinez stared straight ahead. Wallace blinked slowly, jaw tight. Others avoided eye contact altogether. He turned slightly, motioning toward Eva, who stepped forward but didn't stand apart. She stayed just 1 pace ahead of the line. This trainee, Officer Candidate Eva Morgan, has been evaluated today like the rest of you. But her file doesn't begin here. Most of it In fact, you'll never read. And that's by design. He glanced at the instructors before continuing. Some of us remember the name Viper 7, recon and rear guard, deployed under blackout conditions for Operation Black Glade. 12 went in, 5 came back. One of them didn't return with the others. She stayed behind. Leland's voice slowed. For 7 minutes, she held the fallback corridor alone. No backup. No resupply. Her job was to hold position long enough for the rest of her unit to reach the secondary landing zone. She succeeded. They made it out because of her. A sharp breath was heard from someone in the back row. Leland ignored it. She took a round through the shoulder and kept firing until visual confirmation of team extraction. Then she exfiltrated on foot, solo, to an emergency link-up point. No one came for her. No drone support. No medevac. She made it out on her own. A bird passed overhead, wings slicing the air. That tattoo, he said, nodding slightly toward Eva's back, isn't for decoration. It's a memorial. 7 hash marks. For the ones who didn't come home. He let the silence expand. No one moved. Wallace stepped forward slightly, shoulders tight. Sir, permission to speak. Granted. Sir, I mocked her this morning. I said things. I didn't know. Leland looked at him evenly. Then learned from it. Wallace turned to Eva. Ma'am, I mean Candidate Morgan. I was wrong. Completely wrong. I'd like to apologize to you and the team. Eva met his eyes. Her expression didn't soften or harden. Just calm. That's not necessary, she said. What matters is what you do after you know the truth, not what you said before you did. Another recruit, Nguyen, stepped out next. I said something too. I feel ashamed. Eva raised her hand gently, stopping him. If we all got applause for doing the right thing, this wouldn't be the military. We're here to learn. That includes learning humility. The mood shifted, slowly and deeply. It wasn't guilt that hung in the air now. It was respect. Unspoken, but undeniable. Leland turned back to them. From here on out, I expect every single one of you to remember something. The person you think is weakest might be the one who's already carried more than you ever will. And they didn't need to say a word. He looked at Eva. She nodded slightly, signaling he didn't need to say more. Dismissed for hydration and recovery. Report back for evening drill at 15:45. As the squad began to disperse, they didn't rush off like before. Trainees passed Eva one by one. Some saluted. Others just nodded. A few murmured quiet thank yous. Eva didn't puff her chest or lower her eyes. She accepted each gesture the same way she'd run, climbed, and dragged herself through training quietly, without fanfare, just one step at a time. Wallace came up last. He looked like he'd rehearsed an apology, but forgot it all the moment he stood in front of her. She broke the silence first. You saw someone struggling, so you made a call. That's human. What matters is the next call you make. He swallowed hard. I'll earn the respect I gave too late. She gave him a short nod. Then do the work. When she returned to her gear, Martinez was already there, waiting. She didn't say anything at first. You scared me today, Martinez admitted. Not just because of what you did, because you never felt the need to say it. Eva didn't smile. She just said, some things aren't supposed to be said. They're meant to be carried. And, as she lifted her canteen, shoulders stiff from the years-old wound, the others watched her move like they were seeing her for the first time. No longer a struggling admin transfer, but a professional who had served, suffered, and returned not for medals, but to keep serving. Quiet, precise, unshaken. Not because she needed validation, because she had already lived through worse and chosen to come back. By the next morning, the rhythm of training resumed, but the tone had shifted. Reveille still blared at 0500. Uniforms still had to be perfect. Push-ups, sprints, and obstacle drills still pushed bodies to their limits. But something in the way the squad moved, how they looked at each other, how they looked at her, had changed. Eva didn't train any faster. Her mile time was still middle of the pack. Her push-up count hovered near minimums. Her shoulder flared when she had to drag sandbags or do bear crawls. And she favored her left arm slightly during static holds. But no one snickered anymore. No one rolled their eyes when she stepped into line. During a circuit on the ropes course, she slipped halfway up and had to reset. Burns didn't bark this time. He just stood with his arms crossed, watching her reposition and climb again. She made it to the top slower than most, but she made it. At the hydration station near 0730, Wallace approached her. His shoulders were back, but his hands fidgeted with his canteen. He cleared his throat once before speaking. Ma'am, Eva, I just wanted to say this. Face to face. What I said on day one was disrespectful. I didn't know anything, but I judged you like I did. Eva capped her bottle and looked at him. Her expression, calm, but direct. You owned it. That's more than most ever do. He hesitated. I want to earn back the respect I didn't give you. She nodded once. Then keep showing up. That's how you earn anything in this uniform. He stepped back with a quiet thank you. No handshake. No overdone gesture. Just sincerity. Later that morning, during a fireteam tactics course, Eva moved through a dry run clearing drill with 3 other candidates. Her pace was slower, but her transitions were precise. She checked corners properly. Her calls were clipped but correct. After the drill, Martinez jogged up beside her as they returned to formation. I didn't know how to look at you before. I felt guilty and impressed and kind of small. Eva glanced at her but didn't break stride. Everyone carries something. Most just don't have it written on their back. They marched the next hour under Alabama heat, rifles balanced on forearms, full gear. When the formation halted, another trainee, Nguyen, walked over quietly during the rest interval. She didn't say anything, just offered Eva her last protein bar without a word, then jogged back into place. By noon, even instructors noticed the shift. Burns didn't adjust his tone much, but when Eva dropped 1 rep short of the minimum during flutter kicks, he marked it down without the usual snark. He didn't say good job, but he didn't need to. At 13:15 during field gear checks, a 3rd trainee offered to swap loadouts with her when he saw her left shoulder straining under the rifle sling. Eva declined. She didn't want different treatment, but the gesture stayed with her. As they moved through the drill stations, Eva caught a few more looks. Not pity, not awe either. Just quiet understanding. The kind you give someone who's been where you haven't and come back different. During final formation that day, when the squad was dismissed, one by one, trainees began to step toward her. No announcement, no push, just a line forming naturally. Each person paused in front of her. Some saluted. Some gave a nod. A few just met her eyes and moved on. No one said anything elaborate. And Eva. She returned each gesture the same way she had endured training, with quiet steadiness. Her breathing still heavy, her uniform soaked, her body sore, but her presence unshaken. As the last trainee passed her, Staff Sergeant Burns approached. He didn't speak at first. Then, with a glance toward her left side, asked low enough so only she could hear. That shoulder. It's still tight, isn't it? Eva nodded. 9 years. Range of motion's about 80%. He looked at her for a moment, then said, You move like someone who works with what they've got. Eva didn't smile, just replied, That's all any of us can do. And she walked off toward the barracks. Same pace as before. Nothing faster, nothing slower, but every eye on that field followed her, and none of them looked down on her again. The final day of the training cycle began at 05:00 sharp, just like every other. The same whistle, the same shouted cadence, the same push-ups, formations, gear checks. But underneath it all, there was something different now. The stiffness in the air had softened. Where there used to be judgment, now there was quiet respect. And at the center of it stood Eva Morgan. She didn't walk any taller than before. She didn't speak louder or smile more. But every time she moved into formation, the squad adjusted around her, like a formation reshaping itself around a known anchor point. She had never asked for that, but it happened anyway. By mid-morning, their final assessments were complete. They stood in loose formation near the flagpole at the edge of the drill field, waiting for the closing words. Lieutenant Colonel Leland stood with the instructors. His uniform, crisp and pressed, looked exactly the same as it had on the first day. But his tone had changed. He addressed the squad without ceremony. No stage, no loudspeakers, just boots and gravel and his voice steady. You've spent weeks proving yourselves, not with words, but with grit, sweat, and repetition. What matters now isn't how fast you ran or how many reps you did. It's whether the people standing next to you trust that you'll still be there tomorrow, when it counts. His gaze drifted across the line, then paused near the center. Some of you arrived here thinking strength came with noise, that respect came with size, but you learned better, because someone showed you what real strength looks like when it stays quiet. He didn't say her name. He didn't need to. Eva stood where she always had, center left, third row, her hands behind her back, her boots dusty, her hair pulled into that same perfect regulation bun. Her shirt sleeves were rolled just high enough to show the bottom edge of the black ink on her back. After the colonel dismissed the group, something unusual happened. No one moved. Then Wallace stepped forward. He didn't make a speech. He didn't say her name either. He just walked to her, squared his shoulders, and gave her a crisp, full salute. Eva returned it, just as sharp. Then Martinez followed, then Nguyen, then 4 more, then 10. A line began to form, not a command, not a drill, just a quiet, growing moment. Each trainee approached. Some stood at attention, some gave a half nod. 1 or 2 said a quiet thank you under their breath. Eva acknowledged each one with the same calm steadiness she'd carried since the first day she arrived. Staff Sergeant Burns stepped back, arms folded. He didn't say anything, but the corner of his mouth shifted slightly, like the smallest nod had taken root inside him. Master Sergeant Holloway watched too, his clipboard forgotten at his side. When the last trainee passed, the group remained in place, not out of obligation, but because no one wanted to break the silence, the kind of silence that felt earned. Eva looked out at them, not from a podium or platform, but standing right there in the dirt with the rest of them. Her voice, when she spoke, was low, natural, like she was talking to teammates, not recruits. We don't serve for the spotlight. We serve because it needs doing. Some jobs aren't seen, some names aren't known, but we do them anyway, and we keep moving. She touched her shoulder lightly, the shape of the tattoo just visible beneath the fabric. 7 marks. Viper, 7. Every day I wear it to remember the ones who didn't get to come back. Not because I need people to notice, but because I refuse to forget. She didn't say more. She didn't need to. As she turned to leave, the sun caught the edge of her shirt, and for a moment, the black ink flashed clearly against her skin. A vertical dagger. 7 slashes around it. A mark not of decoration, but of duty. And that was what they remembered. Not the stumble on the rope course. Not the slow tire flips. Not the first day assumptions. What stayed with them was the steadiness, the silence, the way she carried more than anyone could see, and still never asked to be treated different. Some warriors shout, others lead, but the strongest among them, they simply serve, and never ask you to understand why.